Hi, my name is Micah Dada. I'm the CTO of Swift Law North. Joining us today is Aaron Swift, who's our CEO. How are you, Aaron?
Good, Mike. Thanks.
All right. Welcome, viewers. Today we're going to talk about the secrets of the credit reporting industry, eOscar, Metro2, CDIA, and more. So first off, what are these things I just named in the title?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Well, first, we are now on our 9th video out of 10 here in the FCRA video series. And so we are really getting into the details. You may remember back in the video we talked about the main players.
Yes.
About 6 main players, but there are a few others. And secrets of this industry really depend on some of these others. So let's kind of start again with an overview of the credit reporting industry.
Okay.
We talked earlier about how that fits into the larger banking system, but now credit reporting itself. And you've got credit reporting agencies basically do things the same way, but they still compete with each other. They don't want to 100% share ideas, proprietary technology, and so on and so forth. But then you also have hundreds and hundreds of creditors, and think Capital One, JP Morgan Chase, your mortgage company. They often send information to these parties. And remember, there's many more than just 3, the big 3. And when you think about that in context, you've now got hundreds of different companies using many different types of systems, having to report similar information to similar but somewhat different companies. And that was a mess. So what happened is the credit reporting agencies formed a trade group called the CDIA. Mm-hmm. That's the Consumer Data Industry Association. It's kind of what it sounds like. It's the association that handles consumer data. And so what they did is they decided, let's standardize some of this process. Let's standardize how creditors send us information. And then let's also standardize via that same system how things can be disputed and then verified or investigated within this system. Mm-hmm. So just again, to kind of back up, all these different players, all these different ways, trying to figure out how to do disputes, how to even report information. And they created this system after they created a trade group, and that is called eOscar.
Okay, so can we break this down even more in detail? And let's start with the CDIA.
Well, again, we kind of did that, and sorry, I skipped ahead a little bit. But again, the CDIA is that trade group. They hold conventions, they have training sessions, they do weekly webinars, they strategize on defending cases all together. And that's the group that came together and formed this thing called eOscar.
Okay, so now let's go over what is eOscar in detail.
Right. So eOscar is this, computer program software. It's basically a platform. Okay. And all creditors now that want to send information to the credit reporting agencies, and most of them do that on a 30-day, rolling basis. Mm-hmm. It's every month. They now do that through eOscar. They log into eOscar. Their system has been integrated into it, and it's how they send all those pieces of information. And we're talking billions of bits of information a day from all types of consumers. Missed a payment, made a payment, what the balance is, what they applied for. Just think of 250 plus million American adults multiplied by how many things could be reported mm-hmm. about them. And that's the breadth of what we're talking about. So this eOscar was supposed to standardize that. And again, it's not just how to share information, but it's the same system that's used when, quote, investigating disputes. And we're going to get into that a little bit more, and as we have throughout these videos. But now eOscar is that system. It's kind of the electronic communication tool that the CRAs and furnishers use to communicate between each other.
Okay, and can you go over the last term that you mentioned, which was Metro2?
Yeah, so Metro2 is then the guidelines by which CDIA has used eOscar to standardize everything. Okay. So it's basically, what should we all be doing in particular circumstances? So I'll just give you an example that might relate to the FCRA. How do we report someone that files a bankruptcy? You would look to the Metro2 guidelines mm-hmm. that were kind of promulgated by the CDIA and then implemented by eOscar. So Metro2 spells out how do you report certain things? How, what if someone settles an account? How is that supposed to be reported? What do you do if someone's a co-signer? And Metro2 also has the guidelines for what do you do when something is disputed.
Okay, and are there any more secrets that our viewers should know about related to this topic?
There's probably too many to name,
Mm-hmm.
but the secrets are kind of baked into what we're talking about here. To truly understand the credit reporting process and the credit dispute process, you need to understand the players,
Mm-hmm.
the standards that they have to, they're regulated by, what to do when you need to dispute, how to dispute, and then really understanding behind the scenes. But this, viewers, this is the important part. So I want to really stress this.
Sure.
What I'm going to tell you right now is really the secrets of the dispute industry. And it's why these videos, why partnering with lawyers like us at Swift Law North is so important. Not going to name any names or defendants, but I'm just going to generally describe how this process works. And that can kind of fit into the narrative why it's so important to use litigation as the backbone for credit repair. So, again, not picking on anyone, so I'm not even going to name a name in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
Bank X
Yes.
had a $5,000 credit card with our client.
Okay.
Our client defaulted, fell on hard times, let's say during COVID. It happened to a lot of people. Defaulted on the debt, and it was $5,000. But our client negotiated with Capital One or Bank of America or Chase or whoever it was to say, I can only afford to pay half of that.
Okay.
Will you accept $2,500 to settle this debt? Bank X agrees, whether that was through an attorney, their debt collector, or directly with them, and they accept that payment. Hopefully it's in writing. It's critical for all of our partners out there. If that does happen, get it in writing. But what happens? That bank, instead of now marking that account as closed and settled with a $0 balance, let's say they mistakenly, purposefully, willfully, recklessly, negligently, however, they mark that $2,500 as just a payment. They keep the account open. Now they're saying $2,500 is still owed. And on the credit report, there's payments missed. There's derogatory information. The account's growing. So that's objectively wrong.
Sure.
Right? So again, this is the secret. What happens when the consumer disputes? This is a remarkable process that I'm sure credit repair professionals don't understand, consumers, and this is why so many mistakes happen and why the mistakes even continue after disputing. So let's just assume our consumer took advantage of understanding the tools that we get or partnered with one of our great partners, followed the dispute procedures, disputed to the CRA the right way. The CRA reached out to that bank, and guess what? The consumer gets a verification back. We all seen those letters. This information has been investigated. The furnisher has verified the information is accurate. What do you do? And why did that happen? Here's generally what happened behind the scenes. And again, this is kind of top secret in terms of the credit repair space, the credit reporting world. When that dispute is received by the credit reporting agency, and that could be by way of online, a fax, a 200-page letter, a CD with voice recordings, it's received and processed in a very specific way. Generally speaking, however you submit that, no matter how many materials, that information is distilled down into a code, a dispute code. And sometimes it's just 3 numbers, sometimes it's 1 letter and 2 numbers, but no matter what, all of that information that's sent, even if there's 100 different things or different reasons, it's generally just distilled down into a 3-digit code. And sometimes a couple of those 3-digit codes, but nonetheless, just down to 3 digits. And now the CRAs going into eOscar, the thing we've been talking about, they send basically that dispute code, some information more, but basically that dispute code to the furnisher of the information. And that, in this example, it's Bank X, right? And that dispute code probably just says, given what we're talking about, I no longer owe this debt. I settled it. I paid this. Here's the check that's attached. Here's proof coming out of my bank account. Here's the letter from the bank saying if I made this payment. How did it still get verified? And it's because likely what happened is that dispute was distilled down into consumer says he or she doesn't owe. That's how basic they then in that dispute code. Well, if Capital One's computer system, the same system that has already decided that was a payment, and I'm still going to debt collect from consumer, and I'm still going to credit report negatively from consumer. That's the same computer system that sent the information through eOscar in the first place. So what do you think that does? Again, it's through eOscar. So it's sent electronically through eOscar. That dispute code is basically checked in a very simple form, if at all, against the information that's already there. And if the dispute code isn't detailed, if there's no human involvement, if it's so rote, if it's so standardized, that's why that computer, of course, just shoots back, we're right, because it's the same information that created the problem in the first place. And in most cases, Mike, and viewers and scholars and consumers, there's very little to no human involvement. Sometimes they don't even send all the information. I'll give you another example. When you go to their online portals to dispute directly with the big three, you're limited to 400 characters. Some of our disputes that we send on behalf of our clients are 200 pages or more because they include hundreds of pages of credit reports, and we're pointing out the errors. So this is kind of the secret. The system is set up to not be 100% accurate. Notwithstanding that the statute specifically says you must follow reasonable procedures to assure the maximum possible accuracy. And just to put that into context again and kind of summarize, almost 20 years ago, 60 Minutes did a segment about credit reporting. And at the time, it was determined that the CRAs were boasting. We get it right 99.9% of the time. Look how great we are. Well, what the reporter did, let's just run some numbers. 99.9% accuracy, what does that mean? 0.1% inaccuracy. That could be 400,000 Americans with grave errors. They knew this problem then 15 years ago. The process hasn't changed. The systems haven't really changed. eOscar is still used. It's still one computer talking to the next. The system just isn't meant to succeed 100% of the time. That is why, for that 0.1%, and my guess is now it's even worse than that, you need help. Those consumers need help. They need to understand how to factually base their disputes, backed by legal analysis, by lawyers, because it's a law, it's a federal statute. And the secrets of these industries can only be known by taking depositions, by really getting into those details. And so if you take these principles, if you really understand the secrets, why things happen, why they don't happen, it's going to better inform your dispute processes, your consumers, and just lead to better outcomes, like we said, time and time again. More deletions, trade line forgiveness, debt forgiveness, maybe, accounts that go away completely. And on top of credit repair, damages for the consumer with no risk because the fees are paid by the bad guys if we prevail.
Okay. Is there anything else you wanted to add in relation to how this all connects with credit repair?
Yeah, I guess just that. It's that don't forget that there's this entire backbone of legal analysis, opinions, case law that tells what is a proper dispute, what rises to the level of needing to be fixed. And you need the experience, the expertise of a legal foundation to do that. That's why we created Consumer Law 101. It's why we have partnered with credit repair professionals. Every step of this process can be improved. And every step of that improvement will lead to better outcomes for clients and more money for not only the consumers, but the affiliates as well.
Okay. Thank you, Aaron. Well, as always, if you have any additional questions, you can reach us at the weekly sessions or in the chats as well.
Thank you.